Well, hello, folks. It's about 11 after 6. We'll get started here, and hopefully we won't keep you all night and everything. But I'm glad everybody came. I appreciate that. What Debbie has is really important. But Nick Christiansen has offered to give the opening prayer. So, Nick.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have today to be together. Thankful for the opportunities that are presented to us in this country. We're grateful for the freedoms that we have, and we're grateful for the state that we live in. We're grateful for the opportunity to be thy sons and thy daughters, and to be able to be lights unto the world. Please bless us tonight as we listen to the speakers, that we will take what they speak and learn from it, that we will be able to better our lives and those around us. Please bless those that would speak tonight, that they will have thy spirit to be with them and be able to teach us what we need to learn. Please bless us all to go home in peace and safety. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. A few things, like we said, on these events, like on our regular meetings, we're going to have a table up here set up for anybody that has started, that's lost their job, started a small business or whatever. We're working to support small businesses and that. And actually, there's some flags up here. Nick has made some very nice wood flags, and so I would encourage you to take a look at them and support Nick if you can. Nick is one of the, you can't be more proud of Nick. He was somebody that actually, and I'll embarrass him a little bit, but he really stood up for liberty and his rights, and it cost him his livelihood. It really did. It cost him a good job and all that, but he's actually a model that we should all be following. And with that, seems how he's here, and I'll do this. I'd just like to give a big hand to Nick. He's a great guy. Nick, you guys stand up. For all you guys that have been coming to these, I will embarrass each one of you at every opportunity I get. And tonight's Debbie's turn, by the way. and on that, if I could just make sure everybody please sign in. I do like to sort of remember how many people did come to these, make sure they're still worthwhile. And also make sure that I have your email and that I can read it, so I can send you important updates and things like that. I won't spam you. A couple of other things. Kathy Kuhl has mentioned that it's election time is upon us. I should say it's election. It's campaigning time and all of that. And so there's you're going to see a lot of efforts, a lot of focus. A lot of stuff happening over the next few months. Kathy Kula is actually a representative, or is coordinating with Priscilla Giddings' campaign for doing things in the local area. And obviously they all need help. And if you're willing, and if you support Priscilla and you want to help, Kathy has a sign-up sheet over there. Just sign up that. She would really appreciate that, and of course so would Priscilla. And we'll likely through the times have similar things for Janice and whomever else is here. So I stress it is important. These elections this May is going to make a lot of difference in this state. I firmly believe that. And so we all have to pay attention and do what we need to. A couple other things. On the 27th, you've been here a few times when Tom and Carolyn Harrison has talked about the Bus to Boise and the Ed Choice effort that they're working on, getting some legislation put together to be able to get the school funding to follow the child. There's a Bus to Boise Adventures, they're calling it, happening the 27th. If you'd be interested in riding on that bus, let me know, and I'll tell you all about it and what it takes to make it happen. It will be, I think, a good time and a good effort. Also, I would say most of us probably think we know what our Constitution, our Idaho Constitution and the U.S. Constitution is all about. Well, I would bet that most of us only know a small fraction about what it is. And on that note, Dennis Marsden. Dennis, where are you? Stand up, Dennis. Dennis is going to present a class on Saturday, January 22nd. And it'll be here, but it'll be around on the other side of the building. It'll go from 10 until noon. Okay, there's a little bit of info on it here on the agenda, but it would be really good. It's the Idaho Bill of Rights and its relationship to the U.S. Constitution. If you're interested in attending, please do it. I think it'll be a good thing, and I'm sure Dennis would like to know now if you're interested. He'd like to sort of give a feel about how many people would be coming. And on that note, he's had a bunch of pocket constitutions made, and actually they're going to be here in a little while tonight, I think. And
Idaho Constitution.
Pardon?
Idaho Constitution.
Idaho constitutions. Okay, and so we all should understand what we live in the state of Idaho. It is a key. The Idaho Constitution is key to us, and so we really need to understand that. Anyway, Dennis has had a bunch made up. I'll say this: he's willing to give them away, but if you could want one and want to support him, they run him about $4 or so a copy to make, but he's going to pass those out. So, and they'll be ready for the class. Okay, a couple of things that I want to show. Jason wants. Here's a quick 5-minute video. Just watch it for a second, then we'll talk. Okay, watch it and then we'll talk.
Of your visual acuity, your sensitivity to differences in line lengths. So I'm going to show you a standard, and then I'm going to show you 3 comparison lines. One is going to be bigger, one is going to be shorter, and one is going to be the same size as the standard. Your job is tell me which line, A, B, or C, is the same as the standard. Seems like a simple judgment. You always get it right. But now, before you give your answer, there are going to be half dozen to 10 other people like you in the room. And they're going to give their answers first. An amazing thing happens. One after another, they say the line that you see as shorter is the same as the standard. Shorter, 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 shorter. They don't say shorter, they just say B, 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 and so forth. Now it's your turn. You know B is the wrong answer. But what do you say? In this study done by Solomon Ash, a classic study of group conformity, the majority of people gave in on most of the critical trials to say publicly that they agreed with the majority. So this study is one of the first classic studies on the power of a group. As long as there's 3 or more people who agree among themselves that reality is not the way you see it, in many cases you give in to see the world in their way. Let's look at that study.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with a white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3,
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1.
Ash found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
One. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
One. This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1. 2. 1. 2. 2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1. 2. 1. 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with a group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
I'm not a Facebook fan, but I happen to, we do have a Facebook page, and somebody posted something that had that on there, and so I looked at it and I watched it. I think it says a lot. It really does. And as you can tell by the way they're dressed, you know, that study was done a couple of days ago. Okay? I submit that what we saw here is what we are experiencing today. And a big example of that, I would say, is masks. You know, a year and a half ago, if I would have said that a mask could stop a virus, and I did it in an OSHA class, I would have failed that class, or at least that portion of it. Okay? However, we have been told by authorities, others, something different to cause us to conform. And that's just what I wanted to be able to get us to think about here, is your view of reality may actually be reality. Don't conform just because everybody else says something, because you can be sure, like the people in this, they are telling you, truly giving you misinformation on purpose. Okay? So next thing I wanted to show before we get on to Debbie, media bias. And we had our Liberty dinner last week, and it was on January 6th, and I happened to notice this article in East Idaho News, and it was from the Idaho Statesman. And I don't know, Jason, if you can pull up a little bit. Some of the things that I saw and noticed is how do they, what do the words say? Come up a little bit. Okay, that's good. If you read this paragraph itself, you know, around 140 law enforcement officers were injured, beaten by poles, attacked with bear spray, and crushed on the onslaught. 4 civilians died that day, including a woman, Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by police when she attempted to break into the hallway that directly joins House of Representatives. One Capitol Police officer, Brian Sicknick, died of a stroke following the attack. At least 4 police officers who defended the Capitol in Congress that day have killed themselves in the ensuing months. Repairs of the building exceeded $1.4 million. More than 700 people charged. I mean, that's sensationalism. If you read it, it sounds, oh my goodness. Okay, and if we fail to actually sit back and look at what has happened, I hate to say it, $1.4 million is not a lot of money. You know, especially if you're looking at some things, like I can guarantee the Capitol building, a door on the Capitol building will cost you at least $10,000 to $20,000. It's not like one of these doors here, and possibly even more. Okay, and that's not to talk about what Antifa did to others. This is an interesting, and I just noticed it when I was preparing this. I look at this. Here we have a guy down here, hey, barely. But I also have a bystander, somebody else that's a Capitol person taking pictures. I would encourage us all to look at the evidence, question the evidence. Why is this and how, if things were gone to, if there was a riot going on, do you think this guy would be so passive there? Okay? Think about it. When you go ahead to one of the words, Jason. If you read what you're saying, you know, look at what they're saying. Are they trying to sensationalize things for certain reasons, you know, for benefit? They're trying to sway you in certain ways. And I would say that almost every media source out there, especially mainstream, or that's tied to the mainstream, that would include Idaho Statesman, Idaho Capital Sun, East Idaho News, Post Register. You can read what they say, but take it with a grain of salt, do your own research, and decide what you think is true. Don't just conform because they want you to. Okay, and with that, that's all that I have to say. I'm going to actually turn it over to Debbie Sadler. Everybody came here not to listen to me, but to listen to about urban homesteading. And like I say, in these times of challenges and all this, we need to figure out how to be self-reliant individually and as a community. And we're going to start doing things at these meetings to try towards that, towards helping us figure out how to do things again individually so we can be self-reliant, and also how we can as a community help each other. I don't have any talents, so I'm going to rely on everybody here to save my tail when the time comes. So anyway, and with that, I'd like to give Debbie a big hand and thank her for coming. Dave was going to be here, but he's a little ill and he didn't want to contaminate anybody. So Debbie's doing it on her own. Let's give her a big hand. Thank you.
Jason, can you play that real short clip that Dave sent?
Hi, I'm Tanya.
Sorry.
Oh, here.
The most unlikely homesteader you will ever meet. Why? because homesteading is all about self-sufficiency, and until quite recently, I understood nothing at all about self-sufficiency. If you're anything like me, you grew up with easy access to malls, grocery stores, and public utilities to take care of all of your needs. You never thought about where the eggs, milk, and butter came from, or whether or not there was going to be enough water to wash yourself or your clothes. And you certainly never tried to figure out how you would keep your family warm during the winter. These are all the basic things that my grandparents thought about and could provide, but for me growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and then in the suburbs of Georgia, it never even crossed my mind. But a few years ago, I asked myself a question. What would I do if the systems I relied on were no longer available to me? It occurred to me that in a situation where the infrastructure and the systems disappeared, not only would I not have the resources to take care of my family, I wouldn't even have the knowledge to do so. Thus began our slow process on the road to homesteading, becoming more self-sufficient, providing food for ourselves, learning to be independent of systems, and really to be more intentional about life and more focused on wholeness. Here's the catch though, we still live in the city. While we're dreaming about owning our own land one day, for now we're living in town in a tiny duplex with a tiny front yard and a tiny backyard, but we're making it work. Over the past couple of years, we've been building our skills, making the most of our space, and ultimately reaping the rewards. If you want to learn more about homesteading, if you want to start the journey, if you're already on the journey, or if you just want to watch us and have fun, come on, join us, subscribe to our channel. We would be happy to have you. We upload videos once a week, every Saturday. Our videos are full of tips, things we've learned along the way, our hilarious animals, and our weird, quirky family.
The process is easy.
Keep up with us. Just hit the subscribe button. And then click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.
Look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks, friends.
That was just a lady who lived in a duplex, right? And her family, and why they decided to try to become more self-sufficient. So why are we even talking about this? Food security. We haven't, at least I haven't seen that many bare shelves in the grocery stores. But if you look online at some places around the country, it's looking not real good. The supply chain challenges. Everybody's kind of been in on that one, and whether it's COVID that's being an issue or whether it's people not wanting to work anymore, trying to get the truckers, some of them have just said, we're not going to Washington. We're not even driving up there. So good luck if you want food. Access to healthy food. That's another one that some of you may only eat organic. I've lived a lot of years on whatever was in the grocery stores, and trust, you take precautions. You wash your vegetables and all that stuff, but I'm not one who will go spend an exorbitant amount of money so I can only eat green. That's just me. We also need to look at building our community. This is going to come sooner or later, where we're all going to have to depend on each other. If you live in an apartment and you don't have a patio garden or something that you can try, and you're never going to be able to supply all of the food you're going to need for your family. It's just not going to happen. If you're like we are, I miss my husband. If you're like we are, you can't grow grain. You can't grow enough to make your own bread. There are others around in the community that have the acreage that can do that. If you have a skill, you can start bartering. or if you have something you can offer others, you can barter. I don't know how long down the road this is, but it's something to at least consider. Access to medicinal herbs. This is something I really have to tell you, I have no experience with yet. But we have resources in the handouts. We made a few. I don't know if anybody even picked them up, but that there are people that in our community that have that knowledge. So we have some friends who come all the time that own red clover. They have herbs and essential oils, and they'd be people to talk to. And there's challenges. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention was fuel shortages. We haven't noticed a lot of that yet, but when they're shutting down so many pipelines, natural gas, we don't have enough natural resources. We're lucky here, we have hydroelectric. I don't know about you guys, but if I had to heat my entire home with solar right now, when it gets to be 3 below, you have to have a lot of solar panels, which is another resource. We're gonna get somebody who's really good at that and is knowledgeable with that to come and speak, if anybody is even interested in these type lessons or gatherings or whatever you call them. The food supply, we've had freezes in Texas that killed so many of the citrus and the things they grow. It just killed one whole season's worth. So there's so many things. The drought we've been suffering here, we still have enough to turn on our hoses and water our gardens, but who knows how long that will be if California and all those people who need water also get our water. The floods in China, oh my goodness, and Brazil. Has anybody seen that? Anybody been watching that? The largest dam in the world in China is in danger of coming apart at the seams now. That will just demolish a lot of people and places and animals and crops. China, by the way, has purchased recently 69% of the world's grain crop. Another thing to consider. There's locusts in Africa and the Middle East, and rats and mice in Australia that are getting into everything. And what else? I have to apologize, first of all. My husband is the teacher. He made this outline. Yesterday, he said, "I think you're going to have to carry this one, honey." No, I'm supposed to stand up here and go, "Oh yes, don't forget to talk about this." I wasn't supposed to have to do the whole thing. So I apologize. Thank you. I'll try not to rattle on too much. Why urban homesteading? We're attempting to be non-fragile. If something happened and the power went totally out, if you have put away from your garden last year even a little bit, you're going to be better off than if you had done absolutely nothing. Most urban and suburban land was once farmland, especially around here. Also, if any of you done much gardening, you will know that this is the Snake River Plain. And until you get below about 3 feet down, there's a lot of rocks. Plants don't particularly care to grow in the middle of the rocks. So, but it's fertile land. It's a good and useful hobby. It will keep you very busy. And it's a better use of resources and the water and the land. Learn to use the land and the yard you have. I keep saying, oh, yeah, I got this great plan. We're going to go buy 2 acres. Looked at 2 acres lately on real estate. 2 acres with nothing on it. Even our house that's gone up exorbitantly wouldn't be enough to buy land and then start all over again building a house. A lot of people have done it, even today. So, and I have a really good friend here, if anybody has any questions later on, that we got our bunnies from. And Andy is here, right here, so he's going to help me answer questions if anybody's got questions on rabbits, bees. They have acreage, so they have a big garden, fruit trees, good resource. So the range of this goes from sprouting microgreens in apartments, condos, to multi-acreage homesteads. Apartments and condos, patios, and vertical gardens with very limited livestock. But you can have quail, pigeons, and rabbits. Rabbits are excellent. They're relatively clean, and they're very quiet. And the city considers them pets, so they don't look at them as livestock. Suburban lots, you can do in-ground or raised bed gardens with possibly goats. Our covenants that we live under won't let us have goats. I would love a little Nigerian dairy goat, dwarf goat, but can't do that. So you have to remember, you may have to barter for milk, butter, dairy things. Oh, he said, let's see. Oh, but with suburban one, you can do a little more extensive livestock. Chickens, rabbits, worms, bees, possibly goats, aquaponic pools to stock with fish. That was part of my 2-acre thing, was to dig a big pond and stock it with fish, and I thought that would be so cool. Oh well. Country lots have a lot more latitude. They have the most extensive things they can do with theirs. Gardens can be humongous, as long as you are ambitious enough to take care of them, because they are a lot of work. You can put in greenhouses. You can do cash crops, grain, larger livestock, cows, pigs, goats, sheep, turkeys, stocked ponds with fish. The challenges. You'll all find this out if you ever try this, but city ordinances, in the city of Idaho Falls, you can have a grand total of 6 hens. I think it's per acre that you have. So if you're in a city suburban lot, no roosters, which is another interesting story that probably some of you have heard, but we decided to get 6 chicks. And we went to Rocknecks, which is on our resource list, and they gave us 6 chicks. And we built the coop and the run and all this stuff. Well, about 3 or 4 months later, we found out that 4 of our 6 chickens were roosters. They were delicious. But it was, and there's ways, we got online, we're good, my husband is good at that. Got online and found out you could make a little Velcro collar for the roosters, so when they went to crow, they can't inflate. And it kept them relatively quiet enough. None of the neighbors came unhinged, but and we kept them long enough for them to get big enough. And like I said, they were delicious. My husband did all the butchering. The dogs and I went to the dog park.
So Debbie, on the chickens, when you're buying chickens, if you go out and you buy what's called a straight run, then that's mixed. They haven't sexed those chickens. If you buy sexed chickens, then you're getting all females, or a very, very high percentage. They don't always get it right. But if you're buying straight runs, you're going to get 50% roosters and 50% hens most of the time. So be aware of that. And then there's also sex-linked chickens. So the babies are different colors.
Andy?
Yes.
Could I ask you to maybe step up and use the microphone so people in the back can hear?
Andy can be his wife's probably working tonight.
She is, yes.
And Amy and I are good friends. So he's going to be my other half tonight.
Yeah, so on the chickens, you can either buy a sex-linked chicken, which the babies are different colors, male and female, and so they know which ones are the females. Or you can buy sexed chickens, which will be all chickens, or you can buy straight run, which will be a mix. And so if you get straight runs, you're going to get 50-50. And depending on how lucky you are, you might get 6 roosters or you might get 6 hens. So it'll go every direction. And then if you hatch your own, which we do, again, you're going to be about 50-50. So you let the roosters get up big enough that you can eat them. You butcher them when they're young, they're still tender, and a lot of the chickens that you eat in the store actually are roosters that they've called. So just be aware of the chickens.
Also on the, if you have roosters, if you don't have roosters, you don't get any surprise eggs in your frying pan.
That's a true statement too. But if you collect your eggs and get them refrigerated daily, you won't get surprise eggs. If you don't collect them diligently, then all bets are off. So, but if you don't have a rooster, then you can't hatch your own eggs either. And so
that's just a caution about getting eggs from your neighbor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were always the supplier for the neighbors, not the other way around. And if you do that, then you can have more than 6 chickens in the city. Just saying.
So the other challenges are HOA rules and protective covenants, county permits, metered water, irrigation canals and water rights out in the country, wells, rainwater harvesting. There are a lot of areas that is now illegal. How that works, I have no idea, but you cannot collect the rainwater off your roof. I have no idea how they manage to police that. But, we will show you some slides later on that will show you what we've done, right or wrong, good or bad. We haven't had to use them yet, so we don't really know, but we're happy with them. Weeds and of course pests, which can get into your chicken feed or your rabbit feed, so you have to be sure and put them in. We even found we put chicken feed in action packers, plastic. We found mice things in there, so we had to get rid of that. But and we put them in galvanized garbage cans. So we now have a big supply of galvanized garbage cans. Your resources for finding some of these things, big box stores and local greenhouses, your own backyard. You'd be surprised what you can find in your own backyard. Do any of you know what purslane is? Do any of you eat it? No. It's excellent in salads. Be sure to wash it good. But if you spray your yard with pesticides and herbicides, don't eat your purslane. Let's see. Patios, rooftops, and vacant lots. There are community gardens, and Idaho Falls has,
Half a dozen.
yeah, I think there's 4 to 6, I believe. And so we have a plot at the community garden close to us, as well as the one we have at home, and we planted all of our corn in the community garden, and our potatoes, our root vegetables, and squash, because it travels everywhere when you do squash. But you're not limited to just your own backyard or patio or whatever. There's also U-Pick farms. Everybody's seen the U-Pick pumpkins over on Rolandette. Really fun. But there are other places around town that have orchards. If you don't have fruit trees, be sure and find out who those people are. Get to know them so they know you. Back to bartering. The farmers markets, community supported agriculture. And we have on one of these pages, there's one in Shelley, and I think there's one here in Idaho Falls, in Pocatello. So that are bigger community supported agriculture gardens. Local ranches and butchers. Craigslist is also another good one for finding some of the resources you may need. Local breeders, seed exchanges. If you can find heirloom seeds, that's really the best way to do it, because then you can collect your own seeds and grow them the next year. So something to keep in mind. You have to look and see how they need to be cared for if you're going to do that.
So my wife and I really like Baker Creek. They are all heirloom seeds. There are no GMO in their system, and they go out and collect historic seeds. A lot of their lines were developed 100 years ago or more. And so if you're doing the home gardening and you're living it on pesticides, living it on herbicides, and want high yield, these are the kind of seeds that you're going to want. Baker Creek heirloom, and they do run out of seeds pretty early, so you have to get on and get them ordered. But then, like you said, we grew half our corn last year was Baker Creek fresh seed, and half of it was from the year before that we kept. So
another good seed company that we use a lot of our heirlooms from is Annie's Heirloom Seeds.
Annie's Heirlooms.
Could you repeat what she said?
Yeah, another company for heirloom seeds is Annie's Heirlooms.
Like Andy said, we had some Baker Creek corn that we grew this year. It was called Painted Mountain, and it was absolutely beautiful. It's for not fresh eating corn, but for grinding for cornmeal, corn flour. Beautiful, purple. Even the stalks were gorgeous, but the husks were red, deep garnet red. It was an adventure for me. I'd never seen that before. Preserving the harvest. Your extension. I forgot to the rest of the resources. Seed exchanges, the internet, local clubs and guilds, and the county extension offices. From what I understand, he retired. We didn't lose him. He retired, our Bonneville County Extension agent. And the one we have now suggested that to get rid of some weeds she was trying to get rid of, suggested her using 2,4-D, yeah.
In the garden.
In the garden. We were both like, I don't think so. And there are advantages and disadvantages in the community gardens. They are all organic. So you cannot take commercial fertilizer, which makes us very happy with our chickens and bunnies. But it also, there's good and bad about organic gardening. We have at our community garden, we've got 3 or 4 apple trees. If you can find a half a dozen apples that don't have worms, you're lucky. So there is, and I don't know what the answer is to that one, but the same thing happened that we have a Bing cherry tree, and they were absolutely delicious. And then we had a pie cherry tree. We went out and we were thinking we can make pie filling out of this stuff. There was not one cherry that wasn't full of maggots. It's a real downer after you picked a couple of bushels of cherries. So that's the pros and cons of organic gardening. You want to add? Okay.
We don't use chemicals.
Yeah, and they have beautiful garden. Works really good. Preserving the harvest. Canning, dehydrating, freezing, freeze drying, root cellaring, which is another one I have to just put a plug in. I have the most clever husband in the world. But he gave me root cellars in our basement window wells. We covered them, and he put little solar fans in it to keep them cool in the summer and not freeze in the winter. But be sure and put your mouse traps in there. Mice can get into those window wells. Let's see. Waxing cheese. I haven't tried this one yet. Have you done any waxing?
I've not done waxing cheese.
Tanning hides, which Andy has done, and fiber arts. If you have sheep or goats, you can do your own, card your own wool. It's a learning experience, but it is possible.
And there is one other, it's called water glassing eggs. So you use a little bit of hydrated lime and water, and you can preserve eggs for 6 months to a year. And we've done that. The only thing that we noticed on those is when you crack them, the yolks tend to get a little bit tender. And so if you want over easy eggs, you're probably not going to be successful. But outside of that, eggs 6 months old taste like they were the day they were fresh. And what it does, the lime fills the pores in the eggs, and it doesn't allow anything to get inside of it. The inside of the egg is sterile, so it won't spoil. So it doesn't seem like you could store an egg for 6 months to a year, but they are fine.
So that's just organic store-bought eggs. You can do that too.
You don't clean your eggs. So if you've got chickens, you don't want to wash the bloom off of them. You want to take them right out of the nest box, dust off the hay or the grass that you've got lining the nest, and they go directly into the lime water. So you want to leave the bloom on them. And there's directions on the internet. It's really easy to do. We did it last year, about a year and a half ago for the first time.
So we just keep our eggs out, and my understanding was that you could keep them for 6 months if you don't wash them, just fine without refrigerating them because of that coating that they come with.
Yeah, that's generally true. When I was in the Navy, I was on a submarine, and we loaded out for our Westpac, which was a 6-month Westpac, and we stored our eggs in the condensate bay, which ran about 85 degrees. And you knew when it was time to stop eating the eggs when every other one they cracked was black inside. But that was after the halfway point on a Westpac. So yeah, 90 days at a fairly warm room temperature, and they were still pretty good eggs. But with water glassing, you have no risk with them at all. And I've read you can store them for at least a year. So.
And you could do the water test, right, to see, make sure they're okay, where you put them in the water, and if they sit up in the water, you know that they're getting there, but if they start to float, then they're not.
Yeah, and that's only if you're storing them in air. Once you water glass them, they don't lose any water. They don't get that air bubble in them. So you don't have to worry about that once you water glass them. The only thing you have to do is make sure that you don't have any that are cracked, because those will spoil and it'll turn your water black and you won't want to eat the rest of the eggs either. So we just buy the 5-gallon buckets from Lowe's, set up, and it's not very much lime. So a group of people can get together. They sell the lime in 50-pound bags or 40-pound bags at Lowe's and Home Depot. That's enough for about 70 years. So if you get together, you can share a bag and everybody can take a gallon baggie, and that's enough to water glass eggs for a long time. With the chickens, they tend to go through cycles, so they lay for 90 days to 180 days, and then they'll molt and they won't lay again for 3 months. And they don't lay very well in the winter if you don't put a light on them, which we give ours a break and let them rest. So if you've got enough chickens, you store your eggs up while they're laying, and then when they're not laying, you don't run out of eggs.
We have weird chickens. Ours just keep laying. And we, like Andy said, we have 2 buff Orpingtons, which is how we got the roosters. And then we bought 3 more sex links, golden sex links, and those are laying machines. I mean, we've had eggs that are almost as big as duck eggs. Double yolks, anyway. So we usually get 5 eggs a day in the summer. Right now we're getting about 4. So, let's see what,
And they're better eggs.
Oh, they're really delicious eggs. But like you said with the lime, if anybody wants some lime, we have a 50-pound bag of lime.
We do too. It's got about a half a cup out of it in 2 years. So. And
to preserve eggs, we have, for my retirement party, I was given my husband bought me a freeze dryer. And that's the way we preserve eggs at our house. And all I do is crack a dozen and put them in a bowl, mix them up, make scrambled eggs. I don't season them. And then I pour them in the trays, freeze dry them, take them out, powder them up, which is simple, and put them in my Mylar bags. You cannot tell whether it's a fresh egg. When you're making omelets, you can cook with it and use 2 tablespoons of powder and 2 tablespoons of water. Simple, simple, simple. But we haven't tried the water glassing yet, but it's on the list of things to do. Utilizing the harvest, learn to cook from scratch. If you're retired, that's pretty easy. If you own your own business, it's time consuming. And that's kind of, but if you can learn to do it, especially making bread, we've tried all kinds of bread recipes, and it doesn't have to be as difficult as it was when I was a teenager learning to make bread. They all came out like bricks. Didn't work very well. Milling grain, We have a grinder, so, and you can change the grinding wheels on them, so you can do cracked wheat for cereals. I love that. Or you can make it very fine and do cake flour, so that's... Anyway, baking, making butter, you can do that with a glass jar and pouring milk or cream into it, whole milk, and shaking it. Takes a while, but you can make your own butter. I found that out making with whipped cream one time. How many women have done that way? You can make cheese and yogurt. We've tried making some mozzarella. If you want to learn to do that, you have to have a... Have you tried making cheese?
Cheese, yeah.
Oh. You have to have a rennet. I can't remember how it's called. Rennet, that's it. And I guess it lasts forever, but you have to have that to learn to make cheese. So, and it turned out pretty good. Processing your medical herbs. There's books on that. I haven't done it yet. I'm worried about getting the wrong plant and making something that will kill us. Yes?
Yeah, so I have a suggestion on that.
Okay.
So if you're not comfortable, grow some of your own herbs at home. You'll know and identify them. And drying herbs is really easy. You can like set them on a cookie sheet, or you can hang them in the old traditional and let them dry. And they will, so herbs like that will lose about 50% of their medicinal property after 15 years.
Ooh, 15 years it will stay good.
So as long as you keep them dry and out of light, they should be fine. But the way to like really preserve them is to make tinctures. And that way you concentrate them, and then you have them, and tinctures get stronger over time. And so that's a good way that they're concentrated. And so and I've had people that even didn't know what to do with, like, they'd done one of these, bound as baskets or whatever, you know what I mean, those co-op things. And they were like, I have all this parsley that I'm not sure what to do with it. I was like, just dry it, because it was fresh. So she was like, I don't know how to do that. You don't need, I did a lot of my drying in Oregon when it was wet. All you have to do, you don't have to like put in a dehydrator or anything like that. Just set them out and let them have some air. And sometimes you can do them in a bag, or but it's actually really easy. And then they become more concentrated when they're dry than when they're fresh. But if you're looking, we do have on our website a couple of like herbalists that are showing plants here in the area and the medicinal properties and then, so.
One of them's the police chief of
Yeah, if you don't know Sam Tower, he's a master herbalist. So
awesome.
He did a class at our shop.
He's too busy to do much of that.
But you just learn one herb at a time. That you got dandelion, I'm sure, in your yard, right?
There is so much you can do with dandelion.
So as long as you don't spray it, you can also forage. I don't forage anything less than like 8 feet away from the main road, just because of exhaust. But there's a lot of places you can forage, and if you identify the plants, you can find them everywhere. You can find skullcat, you can find shepherd's purse in almost everybody's yard. You can find purslane, you can find, but you don't want to harvest anything bigger from a tree that's more than you can put your arms around, though. Just be aware, you can hurt a tree that way. But anyway, it's really not that hard.
Another resource.
Just make sure you
Everybody.
have vodka.
Yes, you vodka. Well, that's for tinctures, yeah.
That's how to make the tinctures. I haven't tried it yet, but
you can do it with vinegar, you can do it with oil, you can do it with vodka, you can do it with glycerin. There's different bases.
But what I'll do is I'll actually ask you to one of these evenings come and go over those things. So, and I think that would be beneficial for all of us if you could maybe come up with something and show us so that we can recognize what we're looking at. Would you be willing to do that?
I think it's really important because, with things falling apart, the medical industry is not going to be dependable. And it's nice to know and be
But
able
you
to...
can make aspirin out of willow bark.
That's right. If you know and identify willow,
Wow, lettuce is growing everywhere.
and it's for pain, and it's like a natural, it's not an opioid, but it has an opioid type effect for pain, and it grows everywhere.
So what I'll do is I'll get with them and ask them to, and we'll schedule a time to actually have them come and show us something specifically for that. And I think that would be beneficial for us all in that way. And I'm hoping that we can have pictures, things like that, so that we can, you know, when we're walking around, we know what we're looking at and can tell the difference between the good and the bad per se. So.
Yeah, I don't see. I can't. When I first started this, I couldn't believe that people could starve, because once you start identifying or being lacking and needing some medicine, when you can find it everywhere. Once you start seeing it, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, this is like everywhere. You can find this here, and everybody else is trying to get rid of them, and you're like, no, don't touch it.
Okay, we'll try to do that.
Okay.
We'll,
I don't want to.
If you decide exactly what you want to do, which I have been doing for a couple of years now, I sell a tincture that comes with COVID. There is an app on our smartphone called Google Lens. Take a picture of the plant and put it in the Google Lens, and it will tell you what it is, and you can search the net for what it is.
Perfect.
what
I've
was
seen
that?
those.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
Go ahead and repeat it.
Oh,
Yeah, so there's an app called Google Lens. You can take a picture of the plant, and then Google will look it up and tell you what it is. So it'll identify it, and then you can look it up and see what the medical properties are.
Yeah, just be careful, because some of the herbs have doppelgangers.
There's
They're like, we call them the evil twins, you know, because like
It's like
goji berry.
mushrooms, know what you're doing.
Yeah, goji
Yeah.
berry looks very much like deadly nightshade
Okay.
around here. So, you know, just make sure that if there's a couple of them, make sure you get it.
What we'll do, and just for that, because of the importance, and I'm sorry to interrupt and all that, but I'd like to, you know, continue, because of the importance of knowing what the right thing is for medical herbs and this type of stuff, and I think that we all would like to know what that is. You know, let's try to put something together so that we can actually show people and do that. But for right now, you know, this discussion is good, but I know that when I leave, I'm still not going to know the best. And so what I'd like to be able to do is when we have that discussion, have something that we can get people to take away with them, or that I can at least send it to them via email or whatever, so that they have the resource and that they know when they're out that they can go ahead and find those things. So, that okay? So I'll get with you and we'll figure out a time that you guys can come and help. And we'll let Debbie continue. Thank you.
I will hurry. And theirs will be much more organized than I am. Again, with utilizing the rest of your harvest, what a lot of us don't think about is shoes. Your shoes, unless you're an Israelite, you know, your shoes are not going to last forever. So we need to learn to work with leather and sewing and tanning, or be able to barter for those kinds of things. So leather crafting can be a fun hobby too. I took a class in junior high or something and learned how to tool leather. It was pretty cool. I even made a wallet. And composting. You have to be very careful when composting that you do not throw meat or weeds in your compost pile. And you won't really throw a lot in your garbage can anymore, because if you put it in a compost pile and know when to make sure it's watered and turned, and you'll have the most fertile garden you can imagine. Needed materials, gardening tools, everybody probably has some. A compost piles that you can build yourself. Containers for either plants or seeds, lumber for raised bed gardens and animal housing, animal tractors, which is, if those of you who don't know, I didn't know what an animal tractor was. It's a little pen that you can put your animals in and drag them around your yard or your pasture or whatever you happen to have, and it keeps them contained, and they're fertilizing as they're eating your grass. So it works really good. Animal processing tools, sharp knives, fertilizers, either natural or manufactured. Epsom salts is excellent for in your gardens. Banana peels provide potassium. Eggshells, if you can grind them up pretty fast, coffee grinder, you can buy it the DI or thrift store for $3, will powder your chicken eggs, and you can put it either in the compost pile that will give you more calcium in your gardens. Chicken poop is considered hot fertilizer. It's very high in nitrogen, which is a good thing around here. Bunny poop is another one. It's considered cold, and you can take it right out from under their pens and put it in your gardens. Works awesome. Let's see what else. Beekeeping supplies, which we'll let Andy talk about here in a second. Food processing and storage supplies, leatherworking and hide tanning tools, and candle and soap making supplies. And you want to talk about bees?
Sure. Okay, so we've done bees for about 8 years now. They're fun, they're really interesting. You get, out of a hive, you'll get about 30 to 50 pounds of honey per year. So 2 hives, you get about a 5-gallon bucket full of honey. And if it comes down to it's time to barter, sugar is going to be one of those things that's worth its weight in gold. So if you've got bees and honey, you can trade that. And honey is useful for a lot of things. It's antiseptic, so you can use it to treat wounds. It is sugar, which people crave, and so you can trade it for other goods. You can turn it into alcohol, which people crave, and you can trade it for other goods. So there are a lot of things that you can do, and then it's just good to eat. It's good for you, and it never spoils. They found honey in the pyramids that was still edible. So you don't have to worry about storing it. You can just put it in a ball jar, put a lid on it. You don't have to process it. If it turns to crystal, you put it in a bath of warm water, it turns back into honey. So it's very, very versatile, and it is a very valuable commodity. And if you can collect the royal jelly, it's got a whole bunch, and you guys probably know better the medicinal properties on the royal jelly, but it's very valuable as well. So as far as the beekeeping goes, it's pretty straightforward. The boxes that they use, you can actually build those boxes. It's just 1x6 and 1x8 lumber. You dovetail it together if you're talented, and if you're not, you just make a square box out of it. You can build a frame. You don't have to have any foundation. They normally put a plastic foundation in there that the bees use to build on, which is already printed with the cell size. But you don't have to have that. If you just build a frame and stick a popsicle stick in the top of it, the bees will build the wax. They'll just follow the pattern and do the wax. If you ever see the jars that have the cut comb in them, that's what they've done, is they've just built a frame, left it open, and the bees build it, and they just take a knife and cut it out. So you can jar the honey that way. There are a couple of problems with the bees. There's a lot of stress on bees right now, and you guys have probably heard about colony collapse disease. They don't really know what's causing that. Personally, I think it's a number of things. I think it's herbicides. I think it's pesticides. We've got what's called a Varroa Mite, which is a nice gift from the Chinese that came over from there. You actually get a mite that lives on the back of the bee. which causes them to be weak. It causes defects in the young bees, bad wings and that kind of stuff, which weakens the hive. And then there's several other diseases that they can get that are either bacterial or viral. Right now in this country, 80% of the bees go to California for the almond pollination. So anything that is anywhere in the country goes to California, everybody gets it, and then they ship it back across the country. So lots of stress on the bees. Her stuff says you've got to treat them. Oxalic acid is what you actually use to treat the mites. And what it does is it's slightly less lethal to the bees than it is to the mites. But anything that will kill a mite, which is an arachnid, is going to kill an insect as well, because arachnids are generally tougher than the insects are. So it's very difficult to deal with it. You cannot eradicate it out of a hive. All you can do is control it. So that's one thing that you have to do. You normally treat them in the spring after they start producing new bees, and in the fall before they stop producing new bees, and that way you've protected the hive at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. The bees do winter over, so they ball up inside the hive and they just kind of continue to rotate around. So the bees on the outside get cold, so they go to the middle. The bees in the middle get warm, so they go to the outside, and the queen stays somewhere close to the middle. And then they just move around and eat the honey. So yeah, you have to make sure you leave them enough. We've lost a lot of hives, and sometimes you don't know why. I've got one right now that's got about 70 pounds of honey in it and no bees. So first cold snap, I went out and checked it, and there were no bees in the hive. They were just gone, and they don't swarm that time of year. So we don't know. Nobody knows what's happening to them. They're trying to figure it out. So, but they are fun. They're very, very rewarding. It's fascinating to watch bees and learn about the life cycle. And I could talk for an hour about bees. They're really fun. We helped Dave and Deb get started this spring with their first beehive, and you guys did two? Or just the one, yeah. First time we opened up the hive, Dave wanted to find his queen, and I'm like, well, I've seen my queen, a dozen times in 7 years, and we're 5 minutes into the hive, and there's the queen. So it was pretty cool. Deb got to see it. And,
everybody else was in their little hoods and stuff, and I'm over there hanging out.
Yeah. The bees, normally, if you don't get them too agitated, they don't get particularly excited. I had a couple of hives that I'd actually open up and just do a real basic check of the hive without smoking them or putting a suit on, because it was just a very calm hive. Sometimes you get one that they are, as we say, a little pissy. So I got stung 5 times one day, and I was wearing a suit. So sometimes they get a little angry, and sometimes they're very, very calm hives, and it's a personality of the hive. I've got friends who have actually killed their queen and put a new queen in because the hive was just so mean. And 60 days after you replace the queen, all of the bees have been replaced. So if you've got a mean hive, you change the queen out, and in 60 days you've got a different personality. So it's pretty interesting. You can catch swarms. Yeah, you can catch swarms, and you can split your hive. So if you lose a hive in the spring when they start producing, you can actually force a swarm basically and produce another hive for yourself. So there are ways to replace the bees if you lose them without having to go and buy a package, which in a really bad time is not going to be available anyway.
Which variety of bees have you used for your hive?
I've done Italians and Cornolians, both, and they both do pretty well up here. They're working on developing, they've got a hive now that through the grooming habits of the bees, they actually chew the legs off of the mites, which kills the mite. And so they may have, within the next few years, a variety that is mite resistant simply because their cleaning habits, basically, they groom the mites off of themselves. But right now, those are not available as far as I know. They're working on some other methods for treating the mites without killing the bees. So there is a Russian variety also, I believe, that's supposed to be a little bit better cold hardy. So it just kind of depends. If you want more honey, there's one variety that does okay in the cold. If you want more cold resistance, there's a variety that does a little bit better in the cold but doesn't produce as much honey. And so but you're going to see 30 to 50 pounds typically. And if you've got a lot of flowers available close, you may see more than that, because the further they have to go to get the nectar, the less one bee can produce. So, and on our property, we're going to put Sane Point in next year. Sane Point is a forage for horses and cows, but you cut it mid-flower, and 2.5 acres is supposed to produce about 800 pounds of honey. So, and then we'll set our hives right out next to it. So our production should go up quite a bit next year. You know, so we might see 80 to 90 pounds per hive simply because they have the flowers within a few dozen yards and can produce more. So, but they are fun. There are a lot of classes that are given for free in the spring. I know 2J down in Blackfoot does a class, and so if you go down there and it's free to do. They sell packages of bees, but they take master beekeepers out, and they bring them in from all over the state, and they take people out and they open up the hives and they show them all the things they need to look for. They have presentations and pamphlets that show the diseases you have to worry about. There's some really good books on beekeeping. So it is fun and rewarding. It is a little frustrating because even the commercial beekeepers expect to lose about 20% of their hives per year due to colony collapse and other problems. So it's fairly significant. Yes?
Do you have to have acreage to raise bees? Could you do it in the backyard?
My first 2 hives were in the backyard on 3rd Street, and we had 0.17 acres. So, and the requirement is you have to be 7 feet from a fence. So you just set them out in the yard, and we used to go and we'd go out in the morning on Saturday when it was warm and sunny and sit and drink our coffee and watch the bees, because it's pretty cool. You watch them, they take off, they fly out to the middle of the yard, you watch them spiral up and then disappear some direction, and then you watch them come back, and they come back exactly the same way. They spiral down and then go back into the hive. So it's pretty fun to watch them. But yeah, you can sit, you know, from here to the podium from the hive, if you're not bothering them and jumping around, they don't care. We mowed around them. We had a black dog. When he stuck his nose in the hive, they thought it was a bear and they reacted. So he got stung a lot. But if you didn't get them agitated, they're really pretty docile. Honeybees are not a problem. And talking about the dandelions, the first thing that they give for pollen and nectar in the spring is dandelions. So if you're spraying the dandelions, you're hitting the bees, guaranteed. So, any other questions? And we're more than happy to help. If anybody wants to get started, we're more than happy to tell you what we know. It's not that much, but we can get you hooked up with a lot of other people that know a whole lot more. And on Facebook, there's a webpage, Beekeepers of Southeast Idaho, and there's a lot of very knowledgeable people on there. And you can, if you have a problem with your hive, you take a picture of it, and you post it and say what's going on here, and somebody will respond to you and tell you what's going on and what you need to do about it. Okay.
Bees are really fun. Like you said, you sit on the deck and watch them all summer. I don't know what kind of bees we had, but we've noticed either they're cleaning out the hive or something, but we've had a scattering of, it looks like drones to me that have been kicked out of the hive.
So at first cross, the drones don't actually do anything for the hive. They go out about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and look for a new queen to mate with, and then they come back and they do nothing, literally. So the first frost, all the males get kicked out of the hive and they freeze to death. So, because they don't want to feed them through the winter. They don't produce anything, and the queen mates once and never mates again. So the males in the hive literally are doing nothing for the hive, and it's about 10% of the bees. So they get booted and freeze to death. And when they mate, they die.
Yeah, they don't last too long. These have, why your urban homestead, there's a lot of beneficial, my husband calls them bioloops. Chickens eat scraps and forage. They will do a dandy job in digging in your garden. They eat pests, produce eggs, meat, compostable fertilizer, and waste disposal. Lots of, they'll eat a lot of different things. Bees, they need medication, like Andy said, and we've treated our bees twice we'll see how well it works. We don't know whether, we had a really heavy hive this fall. We didn't take any honey out of it so they could use it for food for next year. We'll have to see how it goes come spring. We also have worms. We sent away for some weird, that were supposed to be good for the garden, and they have done very well. And you just throw your scraps in the, we put them in an action packer box, and we have some beautiful soil in those boxes. So we'll wait and put it on the garden this summer and see what happens. But worms eat scraps, and they make fertilizer, fish bait, poultry feed, and tillage. Quail or pigeons, we also have quail. They need high protein feed and clean water. They produce meat, eggs, and until you've tried to peel a hard-boiled quail egg, you haven't experienced a lot of fun. And compostable fertilizer. Rabbits, they need clean water, feed, hay, scraps, and they produce meat, cold fertilizer, hides, and sellable pets. We got our pets from Andy and Amy, and they're just too cute. We have a couple of slides and we're almost done.
Do you want me to talk to the rabbits?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Please.
Yeah. So rabbits are a great commodity. Amy and I started doing rabbits basically as the homestead, but the nice thing about rabbits, 2 does and a buck will produce more meat than a cow on less feed. The other thing about it is you butcher them at about 3 to 4 pounds, so you don't have to have refrigeration. You butcher a rabbit, you cook it, you eat it. And tomorrow, you butcher a rabbit, you cook it, you eat it. And so, a family of 4 might eat two rabbits a day. And so you might need 4 does and a buck, but they'll produce between 250 and 400 pounds of meat a year on less feed than a cow will. And so it's really nice. And then we have Rexes, which is a very, very soft fur. It's really was bred to mimic a beaver pelt. And so when you butcher the rabbit, you tan the hide, the scraps, the guts and the rest of the scraps can go to the chickens or the dogs. And so you really close the loop. The bones, again, can be ground up and go into the garden for calcium. And like she said, they're fun. If you want to keep one for a pet, they can be litter box trained. So it's like a cat, and they do have some pretty interesting personalities. But anything you can do with chicken, you can do with rabbits. So you can quarter them and cook them that way. You can crock pot them and shred the meat and then make enchiladas with them. And you can't tell the difference. You really, truly can't. So
we did the rabbit thing for a while, and I'm just wondering if you have any good advice. I quit doing rabbits because it was so tedious picking out the little teeny bones, and they were delicious if you crock pot them, but I swear I burnt more calories than I ate trying to fix a dinner with one, because their bones are just so tiny, and it's just hard to separate the meat from the bones.
I think it's just practice, because Amy and I will crock pot. Usually we can get 3 in the crock pot, and so we'll crock pot 3 of them, and then pull it out and let it cool. And it takes us 15-20 minutes for 2 of us to do all of that. But that ends up being 12 to 15 pounds of meat that is shredded and then can be packaged and put in the freezer. We'll put a little bit back in the broth and make soup. And you literally, my daughter won't eat a rabbit, so she's had a lot of chicken noodle soup at my house and has never been able to tell the difference. So, again, you use the resource. So you cook it, you do your shred. That gives you meat for anything that you can use shredded chicken for or shredded pork. So enchiladas or tacos or anything like that. And then you make the soup. And so you get several meals when you do it that way. And then the other thing we've done, you can make sausage out of them. So we've made breakfast sausage. It makes very good breakfast sausage. And so you take the carcass and you cut all the meat off of it, run it through your grinder, and add your spices to it. And you do have to add a little bit of low fat to it, just because rabbit is higher protein content and lower fat content than boneless, skinless chicken. So it's it doesn't stick together very well if you don't add some fat to it, either some beef fat or some pork fat. But it makes really good sausage. We've shared it with other people. They've always liked it. Makes really good. Rabbit chili is really good. Again, you can't tell it from a good turkey chili or even a beef chili if you spice it up right. So it is a very good source of protein, and in the case where you don't have electricity, it can be a great source of meat because you don't have to worry about refrigeration. Any other questions on the bunnies? We like our bunnies, and they don't take up much room and they don't make any noise. So, and it doesn't take that much time. We've got 10 hutches right now, 10 holes in our cages that we've got bunnies in with 1 litter that we're raising out to butcher. And it takes 10 to 15 minutes to feed and water them a day. It's not much time at all.
How long do they take to break even?
About 3 months. So with 2 does, if you're aggressive, you can get a litter off of each doe once a month. We try to stay, we don't breed our rabbits that much, we don't abuse them. But you get an average of about 8 bunnies per breeding. So if you've got 2 does, basically you can do 1 litter a month, so every other month for each doe. You get 8 rabbits, so that gives you 2 rabbits a week to eat. And you raise them for 3 to 4 months, you end up with a 3 to 5 pound rabbit. And so you've got 2 to 3 bunnies a week at 3 to 5 pounds butchered. So it makes quite a bit of meat. You may get tired of rabbit, but you won't run out of food. So they breed like rabbits. And if you got a bigger family, then you add a couple more does, and you still only need 1 buck, because they're kind of like the bees. They're only good for one thing, and you either butcher them or they're your breeding stock, and you only need 1. So, but they're fun. They're a good time. Amy's gotten into figuring out, if I breed this one with that one, what colors of pelt am I going to get? So, but then, like you say, you can make a coat out of them. You can make shoe liners. You can make gloves. So a lot of things that you can do with the pelts when you tan them.
So do you brain tan them, or?
We've used a battery acid method is what we've used, but you can brain tan them, any of the tanning methods, right? And there's a whole bunch of different ways to tan material. A friend of mine bought an old an old dryer that the heating element was out on it, so she picked it up for like $50. But what you do is, to soften the hides while they're still damp, you put them in there with some tennis balls and you just let them tumble, and that softens them for you instead of having to work the hides so much. It saves you a lot of time, and you can pick up a broken dryer cheap.
Just don't tell your wife what you're doing that Saturday.
My wife butchers her own rabbits. She cleans her own fish too, so I don't have that issue. You got to not be squeamish. The first time
I raised rabbits and grew up in an Italian neighborhood. I had plenty of customers for rabbits.
Yeah, and we probably sell more for pets and for butchering than we actually eat ourselves at this point. But we do enjoy them. They are fun.
I just wanted to know if you have trouble killing them.
Yeah.
No.
Once you like them.
Well, the first time you get scratched up by one, because when you pick them up, they'll actually try to rake you with their back feet. And the first time you come away with 4 bloody scratches all the way down your forearm, you don't have any problem killing them after that. It's not hard. Yeah. We're doing Rexes. Rexes are, they were bred for both meat and for the pelts. There are some breeds that are a little bit better for the meat, just because they grow faster. But all of them you're butchering in that 3 to 5 pound range. So, and it's about 3 months to get them up to that size, 3 to 4 months. So, and we do a lot more in the summertime. The rabbits actually do better in the winter here than they do in the summer. the heat's hard on them. And so we try to breed spring and fall and kind of give them a break in the summer. And then in the wintertime, it's just harder to deal with the babies because if they have them on the wire, if you're not right there when they do that, by the time you get out, you've got little bunny sickles. And so we've lost a lot of litters just because they drag one out of the nest box, or they have the litter on the wire instead of in the nest box. And so we tend to try to breed in the fall when it's cool enough, or in the spring after it warms up enough, and not try to stress them being pregnant during the summertime because the heat's hard on them. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Andy, because we haven't bred our bunnies yet.
That's an experience too.
I can't wait. Last we talked about goats because they're also something you can do on a relatively small acreage, but they need clean water and they'll eat almost anything of plant matter, and they need veterinary care. They have to have their hooves trimmed, so that's something else you kind of have to plan on, or doing it yourself, learn how. Regular milking for dairy goats.
And they climb on everything.
Oh, they love to climb. They also produce meat, dairy, fiber, they're weed control, and they're also sellable as pets. And the hides also, goat skin gloves are wonderful.
And goat is pretty good eating.
Very good. Sheep, their needs are similar to goats, and they produce pretty much the same thing. Pigs, they need clean water, food. They'll pretty much eat anything that you can throw to them. Tillage, and some breeds make sellable pets. My sister-in-law has pigs in a blanket. She sent us a picture. And they're house pets, wrapped literally in a blanket.
The pigs, though, they do root.
Oh, yes.
And so if you've got them on property, you can expect holes because they will dig everywhere they are. So just be aware of that. They are fun to raise. And boy, if you butchered your own pig, it's good eating. It's a whole lot better than what you buy in the store. But they will tear up whatever area you've got them in. If you've got trees, they'll dig the trees up. If they get in your garden, they will till your garden for you in a hurry. So just be aware of that.
And you need to be aware that if you have a sow or a boar, that they can be dangerous once they get large.
Yeah. When we picked up our first pigs, one of the sows that was being bred, she stood about that high, and she came up and grunted. I found out at that point I'm scared of pigs because she outweighed me by a factor of about 4 and had teeth. And then I got my own pig, and they follow you around, and they're just sweet. So I found out I'm actually as scared of other people's pigs.
Dave would tell you a story about when they had a farm in Virginia, and they had a cow that died, and the boys went out and had to dig a hole and throw the steer into it. Now the pigs found the steer and dug it back up again, and were taking care of it. So I guess they can be carnivorous too.
Yeah, they'll eat anything.
Cows need fodder, hay, clean water, produce meat, dairy, leather, and whatever. Yeah, I'd love to have a dairy cow, but I don't think we could get the neighborhood girl to go milk our cow twice a day, so that's not going to happen. Eggshells are useful for calcium for the garden, and chickens, and they're grit for the worms. So we have, if anybody wanted a handout, there's references, the internet, YouTube, places you can look for. we're trying to get one, there's a LDS prepper is what his name is, and he lives in Shelley. He grows in high tunnels, which are greenhouses that they have dug underneath under the ground, and it circulates constant temperature air. He has lemons in his high tower greenhouse. It's absolutely amazing. That's where we got our quail from. But and he has a son that does work with solar energy and alternate energy sources. So we're trying to see if we can get either one of them to come, and if there's any interest from our group here to come and talk to, along with the Red Clover ladies and gentlemen. So I'm trying to think. Most of the references we have for community support, Man Wearing Cheese, they were very helpful with us talking about, and they are not too afraid of the competition. There isn't any, but they have awesome cheese. Hooper's Honey, Cox's Honey, Andy's Honey, Browning's Honey, that's right, Michelle. So, yep, the CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, there's one in Pocatello and one in Shelley. For feed advice, if you want to buy chickens from people who know what they're doing, the Firth Mill in Firth, we're on a first name basis with Claude. Don't ask him if you've got issue. One of our chickens kind of came up lame one time. I asked him what to do about it. He said, kill it, eat it. No, these are my pets. They're my layers. So that's one of the issues with, and I do not butcher anything. Dave is going to take care of the rabbits and the chickens. Eventually, I will learn how to do that, but for now, I'm not up to that yet, so. Free lumber for projects, and firewood, mulch, the hatch pit on Jack's Links Road, if you don't know where it is. They will let you take free wood out of there to build, which is how we got a few straight pieces at Lowe's for the chicken coop and that.
And a lot of the stuff that you do for your animals, they're going to do what animals do, and so you buy them, first quality wood. The recycled wood, you can plan on a rabbit hutch lasting 2 to 3 years typically. So why go spend a lot of money on wood when you can go down to the hatch pit, get something from somebody who's torn down a wall, you pull a few nails out of it, you build your hutches out of it, they chew on it, they pee on it. In 3 years, it's either rotted away or chewed away. You throw it away and you start over anyway. So don't spend money on stuff that really doesn't make any sense to spend money on. And pressure treated, you want to keep away from the animals. You don't want your rabbits chewing on pressure treated wood because it's got toxins in it. So we spend a lot of time at the hatch pit.
We also found that for your gardens, shredded cardboard or just flat cardboard boxes from the bicycle shop are awesome to keep the weeds out. You can put those down, they work really well. But we bought a shredder for the cardboard that we get. Works wonderful. It's made by Fellows, and it's a really good cardboard shredder. Also does your mail, junk mail and stuff like that, so that's also good for your gardens. Garden planning, there's a Mittlighter gardening book. And that's what the LDS prepper guy uses, is the mitt lighter. They have fertilizer, they have different ways to do this, but when we went out to check he showed us his greenhouse when we went out to get the quail, and he had broccoli leaves. My rabbits love him. So anyway, butchering meat, if you want to buy a steer and share it with quarters or halves, Doug's Meats in Chile is excellent, and Hopkins meat. We bought a steer, a cow, a beef, and quartered it with 4 different people. We ended up with about 450 pounds of meat. And Hopkins, if you don't have a totally empty freezer, they also have storage freezer lockers there too, that you can rent. We bought a top locker, $29 a year for, yeah, it's amazing. So, firewood, if you need firewood, if you don't have a wood stove, it's another way to, we've made all kinds of ammo box stoves that will heat a small portion of your house. So if you are in that situation, wood stoves, there's some beautiful ones, there's some that are just functional. We got like a camp stove that burns wood, and you can, like I said, you can get mulch type wood at the hatch pit too. So, do you want to find those pictures? Do you have anything you need to add?
One other gardening resource, if you go look at the stuff that they did for the Victory Gardens, that was really designed for urban gardening during World War II so that families could feed themselves instead of taking resources that they needed for the war effort. And so the planting on that is much, much tighter than what the recommended planting is that you'll find on the seed packages, because they wanted the density. And so if you've got a limited space, Victory Garden type garden is going to give you a whole lot more produce than if you build a garden and follow the seed packages. So I'd recommend doing some research on that as well. And then the other thing, what I always worry about is if we have a problem with deliveries, you're going to have problems with gasoline, diesel. Those are not going to be available. The electric grid may shut down for, instead of an hour, it might be a week. So what your water source is going to be is going to be problematic. And so you have to figure that out. If you've got a well, they do make a hand pump that goes right down into your well casing. And depending on how much money you want to spend, a simple one is a few $100s. A more complex one that you can pressurize your well tank with is a few $1,000s, but it's a hand pump. So you can go out and pump your tank up and then take a shower or do your cooking and that kind of stuff without having to figure out how to get power to the well. So there are some options for getting water that's drinking water, potable water, but then how are you going to water your garden too? How are you going to get water there? So, and you're probably not going to have gas for a truck where you can put water in a tank. So having those sources and figuring out how am I going to deal with it when the city's water supply is turned off because the electricity's off, and I have to figure out how to water my garden because it hasn't had water for a week. So those are kind of things to work out and figure out. The other thing is food on the shelves will last about 3 days if they turn the trucking off. And at the end of that 3 days, people are going to get cranky. They're going to be looking for food. And if they know you've got it, you need to be able to protect it as well. So those are other considerations.
Just back a ways, can you tell me where the hatch pit is?
Do you know where Bish's is?
The RV
The
place?
RV place, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
over by Highway 20 in Louisville. So you turn and go down that road that Bish's is on, and it's the first place that you can turn going north after you go
Right.
past Bish's. If you're headed west, it's a right turn right after Bish's. And it's, you can go in there and any of the wood pile, you can go sort through it, and anything you take is free. They do shred all of the tree limbs and stuff, and so you can take that for free as mulch, and it's pretty nice mulch. So rather, it's not dyed like you get at Home Depot, but it's nice mulch, and I like the price. The truss plants go and dump their ends that they cut, and that makes great firewood. I ran a wood burning stove for 4 years, and that's all the wood I used in it, and I'd have to dump ash, and we kept it burning continuously, 24 hours a day. I'd have to empty ash 4 or 5 times a year. So it just doesn't produce any ash. It's really nice wood, but it gets picked through pretty quickly.
I'll bet. So now tell me, you're heading north on Holmes.
Yeah, north on Holmes, where you turn left just before you get to Bish's. So between their lot and their showroom, you turn left right there. So it's right after you go under the highway. You don't turn under the highway, but the next left you can take, you turn left, you go past Bish's, and you turn right.
It's
And
out past that truck stop.
It's a Louisville exit if you're coming from Idaho that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're coming off of 20, you go north on Louisville, hang left when you get to Bish's.
She's for you to
Oh, there you go. That's 15, you need 20. There's 20.
It's right there.
So there's Bish's. So you turn, you go past 20, you turn. Bish's lot is here, their showroom is here, so you go down that road, and then you turn right here, and this is the hatch pit. So it's Jack Jenkins Road, and that's the only thing that's back there.
Do you have to have an appointment or anything?
Nope, you just drive up to the gate, say, I want to go look through the wood pile, and all the construction waste, the clean wood construction waste. So when we build rabbit hutches and we put plywood on the back wall and the side walls, it's 1/2-inch plywood or 7/8 plywood that is the scraps that they didn't use when they cut the eaves on a roof. The wood that we use is 2x4s. That sometimes it's ends that we split into 2x2s. Sometimes it's just reclaimed. You know, somebody tore out a wall and reclaimed it. We pulled the nails on it and split it. And then we make the hutches out of it. And they're just going to chew it up anyway, so who cares?
Okay.
Just watch where you're driving when you're out there. We've ended up with a few flat tires from the nails.
I'm curious, if I'm doing a raised bed, do you have any recommendations for specific lumber? Do you bother painting it? How frequently should I expect to have to replace it?
I would use redwood.
Because it doesn't
Right.
rot,
Yeah,
but I wouldn't use pressure treated wood.
Right.
You can use railroad ties. They'll last longer than the redwood. And the creosote really is not going to do a whole lot, I don't think. But I definitely would not use pressure treat.
Sure. Railroad ties will leak arsenic.
Yes.
Do they have arsenic now?
Yeah. You'd have to line it.
This is Dave's electric bike. He's hauled, we live on the sort of the southeast end of town, kind of, and he's ridden that bike out to Cal Ranch and hauled 100 pounds of chicken feed on the rack. And the basket in the front comes in handy, and the battery charges, we can charge it with a solar charger. So it's called the Red Wagon, is who we got that one from. So
You buy that at Dave's?
we bought that one online, and it took forever to get in. It's not quite as bad now, but this is our backyard. Back here's where we put our rabbit hutch and our, the yard doesn't look real great because we have 2 dogs also that absolutely love our chickens. These are our raised beds, and this is a tomato planter that we have a baling twine for the tomatoes to climb on. It works pretty well. Bird feeders.
Beehives in there too.
Oh yeah, this is our beehive. So, and we've only got one because we were trying to figure out what we were doing right now, but you can add supers on top of it as they fill up with honey, so. And that's our Dave's workshop. So, it's a different view. That's our chicken coop. And part of our greenhouse, that we made out of
PVC plastic?
no, well, it's PVC, but it's also, the framework is
Oh, the cattle thing.
cattle panels. And I wish now that we have used more, but we don't have a very big backyard. So it's, Dave could tell you the size, but, and then we covered the cattle panels in that foam insulation, tubing stuff that you just, it's split on one end and on one side. You've just lined all the things so it wouldn't, the plastic wouldn't get ripped up in the wintertime, and it's held up pretty well. I don't know what he sent as far as pictures went. So this is our front yard, and we ripped out a bunch of, this is the only thing, the burning bush here, and he's gonna, this is all native milkweed. He could tell you what all our plants are, but they're all now native plants that, and it's kind of a country garden sort of looking thing. My son thought it looked like a bunch of weeds, but I thought it was kind of pretty.
And the bees love it.
And the bees absolutely love it, and we have a hummingbird. We can get hummingbirds that will come in and visit us. So anyway, we're pulling out the burning bush, and I'm going to cry when he puts in hazelnuts, I think they are, trees that we bought. Hopefully they will last in the shop through the winter. So I think he said, oh, this is our little buddy. This is our male. He's so cute. I just love him. They love cardboard. We made their hutches. There's a wood frame. Oh.
I'm trying to find it.
Oh, that was the chickens. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. And so they don't chew on the wood because it's outside of their pens. This is our breeding,
Your grow out.
our grow out pen. That's what it's called. And this is Buddy's. This one, and they have, normally they have water feeders in the summer along here. For the winter, they got little ceramic dishes because I can take them in. They drink, Buddy drinks a lot of water, so I have to go out and fill it up a couple times a day. But our 2 does are in here, and we bought Buddy a nest box so he could have something besides the wire to sleep in, and we filled it full of bedding that we use for the chickens, so they are warmer, even though they do handle the cold really well. And this is their feed boxes that and Buddy, we found out, likes to dig in his. He didn't know they did that. So Dave had to kind of figure out like a bird feeder where he stretched the wire out so he could get his head in to eat, but he couldn't get his paws in to pull all the feed out. So that's our bunny hutch. Oh.
Go back where you were. I think that's your cellar.
Oh, that I think is.
That's a water.
Your window well.
Oh, that's probably, yeah, my window well root cellar. So, although, and those are, we've got this is inside the root cellar that we built some framework in, and we put some cow stores, plastic things that will stack in there that will, like, we keep filled full of sand, and we put our potatoes in there and some carrots because they're supposed to store that way pretty well. And that's our vent for the air. And this is what the wood in our window well looks like. So, and another picture of our root cellar, not a very big one, but that's from the outside. These are IBCs, which are 275-gallon water containers that we put on the side of the shop, and in we're never sure when we're going to have water or rain or not. So in the spring, we just filled it up with the hose. But it comes down, we have a rain catchment from the shop, and we have 2 of those. They're painted green so we can keep the moss and algae from growing in them. But we have a lot of rain. There's our other rain barrel on the other side of the shop. And we got that at Sam's Club, I think. And they're 65-gallon, I think, water catchments. That is our tractor that for the chickens, and we put the bunnies out there, not in the winter, but so, and you have to kind of, one end we have 2, this is what both ends look like. This is our little handle, and it's got wheels on the back so you can pick it up by the handle and drag it around the yard. So, and that's what our bantam chickens lived in most of the summer, because the big chickens, this is their coop. This is the little nest area for the bantams that we had to add on. The run is underneath, and it's full of it's sand in the bottom, and it goes all the way down, and it's to keep varmints out of the chickens' coop. That's all concrete bricks, pavers that it's sitting on, and the roof slanted toward the fence, so all the snow and stuff slides off the back. Yeah, it goes between the fence, but and that's our urban homestead that we're still trying to work on it. It's just, we're beginners, but you have to have some place to start. And that's how we kind of got started. A lot of people don't know where to begin. So we have bees and worms and quails in the shop, chickens and bunnies. Anybody have any questions? Andy's the one with most of the answers. I'm sorry if we went a little too long, but Dave's.
I just have a question. How long have you been doing this? You say you just got started. How long have you and Dave been working on this?
We got the chicken. There is an order to this. Do not go buy chickens and then go build your coop and your run. That's what our neighbors next door did. So if we have, in our little corner of our neighborhood, we have people on the corner that bought chickens and then they had to build the run and the coop. And it's not too bad in the beginning, but you cannot keep those chickens in a little action packer brooding area for too long. They have a tendency to grow. And we bought the chickens, we've had them, this will be our 3rd year with our chickens. So,
3 years?
3 years with the chickens. And the bees we got last summer from a gentleman that I worked with. He was a guard, and so I heard him talking about and Andy was talking about them. A lot of the commercial beekeepers will pack up their bees and send to California in the wintertime for the harvest, to pollinate for their nut trees, mostly I think.
Mostly almonds.
And so anyway, that's where we got our bees from. I have no clue. Did you know what kind they were?
I think yours are mixed. I think they're a cross. I think they're a cross between Italians and something else, but I don't remember what.
I don't know what they look. I know what they look like. They look like bees.
They look like honeybees, yeah.
Yeah. So, but and the garden. We started out with the cutest garden. It was so cute. It was circular. My husband is so clever, and we had. I wish I had a picture of it, but the plots were like this, and they were round on the outside and the inside, and then we had a little walkway between the 4 quadrants, and they were so cute, but it didn't grow enough. Didn't grow enough stuff. Be careful when you grow herbs. Mint, chives will spread wildly. You will have chives going everywhere if you don't keep them in its own little certain area. And they are so easy to dry. I still have, I put the mint in pots, and they come into the house and stay on our south side of our house, so we can have mint any time of the year.
Well, I think the short, not that long, you haven't been doing it all that long, but you're learning really good, it looks like. And
we're trying.
And they're trying. The key thing here, I think, is, first, Debbie, thank you very, very much. Thank you. I just give her a big hand and give Dave of course, it's too bad he wasn't able to make it tonight, but the key thing here really is they're starting to do things that a lot of us should have been doing a long time ago. And they're doing it on a relatively small scale, just have a small backyard that they do it. Andy's doing it at a little bit larger scale. But I think all of us have an ability to do something. And we ought to be looking at what we can do and how we can do it. And I'd ask you, if you have any questions or anything, you want to see anything, send me an email at info@standuprido.org. and we'll try to get something figured out and work. This is just a prepper, if you will, of some of the things that are out there that we can do. And what I hope to be able to make it happen is so that we have more specific, informative type things, just like Liza and Tim, we were talking about that. You know, if we can, I'll get with them, and hopefully within the next, very shortly, we'll be able to have them come and tell us more specifically on a more focused thing about what we can do, and medical herbs, etc., like that. So, you know, I think that would be beneficial for us all. If there's talents that some of you have that you think you can share with us, you know, let me know, and we'll try to work it in. It's like it was being said earlier, is, you know, as a community, we're going to need a lot of things. I remembered something, leather tanning, these type of things. How many shoe repair places do we have in town? There's a few listed. One. And that's Tom's on First Street. He's been there forever. Okay? But we used to have several. And those shoe repair places have they've gone away. And, you know, if the time, or when the time comes one night that you need to have a decent shoe fixed, you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to take it somewhere. Okay? You're going to have to either do it yourself, or maybe somebody here knows how. And so if you have a talent like that, let me know, and we'll try to compile things. But the big key here is all of us, we need to get to know each other, know what our talents are, know what we can do to help each other with, and learn how to take care of each other. I'm not sure, we're still trying to firm up what next week will be. Have a couple of people that are trying to work some things that'll be more in this line of self-reliant type things and what we can do to help ourselves. The week after next, we're having Wayne Hoffman. He's actually the president of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Now that's a controversial foundation, if you will. They are very hard on our legislators. They try to force them to, let's put it this way, they have a, if you've heard of the Freedom Index, okay, they gauge every legislator that we have in the House or the Senate. How do they vote, and how do they believe, or, you know, on a constitutional basis, basically. Okay, if you look at the Constitution, what should be, how are they performing? And they have an index out there, and you can go look it up at Idaho Freedom Foundation, look at their Freedom Index. We have a few that are at 100%, but most everybody probably gets a, if they're at best, a C, D's, F's. Okay? So they are viewed as being controversial because they try to hold our legislators to their oath of following and upholding the Constitution. Okay? And that's
Do that with education.
Why is that controversial?
well, because if we look at things, Bev, you had a comment?
They are also starting an index for education, so we will see that rated as well on the schools and the teachers, I believe.
Yeah, why is it controversial? The question I asked, why is it controversial that we, are they upholding their oath to uphold the Constitution? That's because they haven't been and for decades, to be truthful. And more than that, and the thing that is, if every politician had upheld their oath to adhere to the Constitution, we would not be in this situation at all where we are today in the country. Okay? And the issue is, and I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, every official swears to uphold the Constitution. Jane, you had a question first.
Actually, I have a comment. So their opposition is IACI.
I know.
And IACI is actually an organization that grades our politicians based on business interests. Idaho Freedom Foundation is based on supporting what the citizens of Idaho are interested in, because we've been ignored for so long. And they also are very favorable towards a lot of issues that have not been passed, and have been pointing out all the time these bills that actually would help Idahoans, how they get shelved. They get put into a drawer, and they're not looked at or voted on.
They do, like I say, they're controversial. They do try to hold people accountable. I have a couple other questions here. Robert.
I'm curious, just in fairness, what percentage of the voters are interested in getting the politicians to follow the Constitution? Too many voters out there, and I'm not specifically Idaho, they're looking for what the politicians are going to give them, rather than upholding the Constitution. So I'm wondering how well informed the voters are as to what is coming before the legislation, and are they doing anything to craft legislation that they want to get passed?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of people, and my comment to you is a lot of people are really apathetic right now, that they're saying, I want to be taken care of instead of I want to have responsibility for myself. And, that's what's got us into an issue. And so, David, you had a comment? Our effort here with Stand Up for Idaho is try to educate people and get people to wake up. And sooner or later, that will happen. So we'll close that pretty quick, but David, here.
But I just think it has a lot to do with rhetoric, that we're hearing a lot of rhetoric. There's people who are good at speaking well, and they say things that we want to hear, but when the proof is in the pudding, and for a lot of these people, we're hearing them say good things. And over time, if we don't hold their feet to the fire, if we don't do enough, if we don't speak up and be as valiant as possible, even though we're weak and it doesn't seem like there's much that we can do, nothing will get done. But our efforts can be magnified because there's fire behind it, there's truth behind it. And I think that, I don't know, the rhetoric is just I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. I think you're tired of it.
Yeah, I'm tired of it. And again, like I say, it's a rhetoric, and we have to hold people accountable. That's one thing about politicians, and a lot of them, and not all of them, and I use that term loosely. Too many of them will say whatever they need to be able to get elected. And then they'll change their mind, and then they'll bend to the pressures of IACI, of the businesses. And a lot of times there's a falsehood out there, and I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and this is my opinion at least. A lot of people say, well, why don't I get all these big companies in and all that, the jobs that they're creating. We can bring somebody in and create 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 jobs. Pick the number, and but we have to give them tax concessions. We have to give concessions this way to let them do this. But think of all the jobs. That all sounds well and good, but the backbone of this country really is a small independent business, and those are the people that make us strong. And actually, we look at right now, in my opinion, this urban homesteading and self-reliance. What's that mean? That means I need to learn how to take care of myself. I need to learn how to take care of my family. I need to learn how to help take care of my community. It's not how can I get my government to take care of me, because that doesn't. Sooner or later, we all know that's not going to work. So the key issue there is, support the small business guy. That ends up being that's the backbone of our country. And with that, I'm going to quit rambling right now and everything. But I do appreciate everybody's coming and input. And like I say, if there's anything else you want to see, if you have any ideas what we can do here, I'd really appreciate it. Send me a note, send me an email, and we'll make some things happen. But the elections are going to be heating up here. We're going to try to get some more politicians to come in and talk to us and see if they will. This legislative session is in session, so it's going to be hard, but we need to pay attention. pay attention to the bills, pay attention to the votes that are occurring. Because if you like what's going on and if you like what's being decided upon in this session, then fine. Okay, you'll know who to vote for. If you don't like, then you need to figure out how to replace them. So that's the key. There is it's time to act up. To pay attention, stand up of course, and make a difference. So with that, thank you everyone. I will. Oh, my boss is calling up.
We had Ron Nate to our Liberty dinner, and he offered starting in February to come on Saturday mornings and kind of brief us on what's going on in Boise while he's there.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll work with Ron, and we haven't set a date on that, but we'll get an event or something, and we'll let everybody know. It'll be in the morning or afternoon. Have to recognize that they get the weekends off, and so they'll come in, and he's at least willing to spend a day, one of those days, with us. It'll probably be the first or second weekend in February, because that way they're into the session enough and be able to see what's going on and what's happening. So.
Or what's not going on.
Right.
Nothing going on is still something going on. So anyway, with that, thank you everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Drive home safely. Thank you.